Good morning. I think we'll get going. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Nick Page. I'm the general manager of Aurora Coast and Comox. I'll be hosting today's call. I'm sitting in the heart of Aurora Coast, which is home to Aurora's Cannabis Breeding and Genetics program. We're located in Comox, which is about 3 hours drive north of Victoria on Vancouver Island. Today's call is going to give you an opportunity to learn more about this fantastic facility, hear more about our Aurora's research program, talk to some of our leading scientists about our cannabis breeding and genetics work. And it really is a world-class facility in terms of tools and resources to accelerate Aurora's breeding and genetics program. We've had relatively few visitors because of COVID, but the people that have a chance to see what we do here have really walked out with stars in their eyes. It's been amazing to sort of see people within the industry have a quick visit and realize just again the sort of tools, techniques, and expertise that we have here. And we really think it's a unique asset. It differentiates Aurora from our peers and competitors. It's also a very cool place to work. We have a team of about 20 people that are really thrilled to be part of a leading edge research program, particularly that we're based in a small town. Not many opportunities like that. In terms of the schedule today, after this brief introduction, we'll jump to a video that give you a little bit more behind the scenes look at Aurora Coast. And then we'll move to our largest greenhouse room where we'll talk to Dr. Greg Bowdy, who's our Senior Director of Plant Breeding and Genetics, and Andrew Hand, who leads our cultivar trialing and selection process as Director of Cultivar Development. And we'll come back to me to moderate or host a Q&A session for the last portion of the call. And if you're interested, you have questions, you can start posting them to the chat now. I think the link was on the homepage for the event, and so you can start to populate that now. Just two further points before we move to the video. If you have additional questions or you want to schedule an interview, there's lots of different opportunities. You can reach out to Kate Hillier specifically to arrange things. Andrew and Greg are both available for the next hour or two if you have specific follow-up questions. And if there's more opportunities in the next days or week to through Aurora Communications to reach our science staff. So actually today on site at Coast, we have Charles Pick, who's our Senior Vice President of Science and Innovation, who leads Aurora's science program nationally, as well as Lana Cully, who's Vice President, Innovation and Consumer Preference, who oversees basically the translation of science into products and processes that benefit the market. So there's a range of abilities, again, to get more information about some of the specifics of what we do at Coast. I also want to point out that Aurora Coast is only one of Aurora's science facilities. We're a real hub for the plant breeding and genetics work, but we also have a smaller facility at UBC that really focuses on genomics and bioinformatics. We work closely with Anandia Labs in East Vancouver, who are experts in analytical chemistry and testing. And we have research trials at most of our production facilities and science staff that are embedded there. So we have, that could be Aurora River north of Toronto, Aurora Sky in Edmonton, and we have a facility in the interior BC that we're trialing some outdoor growing, and I think Greg will talk a little bit more about that as well. So I'll now transfer over to the video, and we'll come back a little bit later. Thanks very much.
My name's Greg Bowdy. I'm the Senior Director of Breeding and Genetics. I did my PhD at the University of British Columbia, where I was working on sunflowers as part of a project that was trying to make our crop plants more resilient to climate change. After that, I worked on tomatoes specifically focused on understanding the genetics of disease resistance and some consumer-facing traits like fruit color and flavor. Here at Aurora's Breeding and Genetics, we're working on some of the most interesting and challenging questions in cannabis research. Our goal is to breed the best cannabis genetics in the world, and I'm confident that with the team that we've put together, the facility that we have, and really the resources and expertise that we're pulling in from all across Aurora, we're going to be able to deliver on that goal. On the genetic side of breeding and genetics, we're really trying to look at some what seem like basic questions about this plant. You know, how does it do what it does? How does it make terpenes? How does it make cannabinoids? How do things like plant height and yield interact? How does potency and quality form in the flower as it matures? So understanding those is really the foundational piece to letting us breed in a smart way. So it's very important to get that piece right. But the genetics team does go one step further than that, one step down, which is to understand the genes that are responsible for those traits. So we've done a number of experiments that actually kind of look like this. This doesn't happen to be what's in this room right now, but if you were to be here for one of them, you would see, you know, replicated trials of very diverse plants, and you can kind of see blocks of different things and some really diverse material out at the back. We would go out, measure them, smell them, collect samples for chemical analysis, and critically extract DNA, sequence it, and put all that data together and do a whole bunch of analysis and find the genes that are responsible for, or regions of the genome that are responsible for those traits that we care about. And this lets us do a process that's called marker-assisted selection, which massively accelerates our breeding program. And I'll give an example. Recently, we went through this process and discovered a region of the genome that's actually increases potency. So we're able to grow seedlings, do a genetic test on them, and essentially get rid of the seedlings that are going to be lower potency and only grow up in a room like this, the ones that'll be higher potency. And this isn't because we only care about potency, but potencies are a requirement. And essentially by getting that set aside, having that dealt with, we can focus on all the other traits that we care about: the aroma, the appearance, the quality of the flower, the yield, the maturity. So that's just one example, and we have many, many more things in this genetics research pipeline. On the breeding side, of course, we also have short, medium, and long-term goals, and I'll just speak to one of them, which is what was a longer-term effort, but as with many things in the cannabis industry, is much more accelerated than I would have thought it could have been, which is breeding for outdoors. And we have a really nice story from last year, which is this plant right here, which is Goldberry Kush. So Goldberry Kush was grown last year at Aurora Valley, which is in the Okanagan, and sold through our medical channel, and it did excellently there. And the plant's performance out in the field, which came from our research effort, was also excellent. It matures early, it has great yield, it has good potency, you can see it has nice, very large flowers, and a really strong berry aroma. So we're very happy with that, and it's really just some of the first stuff to come out of our outdoor breeding effort. So with that, I'll hand it over to Andrew Hand to speak to one of our other major breeding pillars, which is our cultivar pipeline.
Hello, my name is Andrew Hand, and I am the Director of Cultivar Development at Aurora Cannabis. I come from the MedRelief facility in Toronto called Aurora Ridge, and I was there for about 5 years, where I led a number of different research initiatives looking at how do we improve our cultivation, how do we initiate our extraction technology. But what I'm most proud about is the work that we did in our cultivar development pipeline there. Over the course of about 5 years, I screened through a little over 1,000 seeds, commercializing 13 different products, and some of those are some of the best-selling products we have on the market now, including some mainstays on the Sanraf offering, including Tangerine Dream. I'm really happy with the work we did there, but it was a challenge given the scale that we operated at. So when I got invited to come out here to our beautiful Vancouver Island, to this amazing facility at Aurora Coast, I was excited because I'm able to do the work that I did at MedRelief at the Aurora Ridge at a much, much larger scale, and with a bespoke research facility, and a great team of excited and passionate people about what we're doing. So what do? We breed for cultivators and we breed for consumers. I mentioned cultivators because it's important to find products and genotypes that will do well in each unique facility that has its own unique challenges and can be grown time and time again and to a level of consistency that our consumers like. But more importantly, and what I want to talk about today is for our consumers. We know that the market right now is challenging and that there is very high demand for high quality product out there, and honestly our competitors are doing well in producing high quality stuff, but I know that with this breeding program we're going to be able to find new genotypes that are going to really blow a lot of our consumers away. So how do we ensure that what we're bringing to market is what consumers want? We've put together panels of experts that are putting together data packages on new cultivars around the sensory aspects of these products. So the smell, the taste, the effect, all of that. And they tell us objectively whether or not they like a lot of the new products that we're considering for market. And we couple that with market research to understand what the growing trends are, what the future looks like, and that helps guide our breeding process and our selection process to make sure what we bring out the other end is what consumers will love. So what does the pipeline look like? Well, what we do is we germinate thousands of seeds to begin with, potentially even tens of thousands of seeds when we bring in marker-assisted selection that Greg was talking about. And we flower them multiple times in a couple different rounds that start with thousands of seeds, small number of clones, and then we whittle down to hundreds of genotypes, to dozens of genotypes, and then from that we end with only a handful that we bring to market. So it's a whole process of collecting data on great plants, weeding out the weakest ones, selecting for the ones that are the highest potency, highest terpenes, smell unique, and then we bring them to our production facility to see how they do there, and then provide flower to our expert panels to ensure that it meets the highest quality standards. This is exciting because the way this pipeline is designed is it will allow us to keep our offerings relevant and fresh. We know that consumers want to try new things all the time. We know that there's a lot of exciting products out there, and we need to keep up with that. And this system will allow us to do that. We're going to be able to have this whole pipeline run in parallel multiple times so that not only do I have products ready to launch now, which we'll talk about, but I have the next ones lined up after that, and the next ones lined up even after that. So we're thinking ahead, and we're staying nimble and fresh. So I want to talk about some new products that we're going to be launching to market mid-next month, which I'm very excited about. It's the first new cultivars that come from this pipeline, and they honestly are some of the best cultivars I've seen in my career so far. For example, this is one that's called Lemon Rocket. It smells very strong of gas and lemon. It's high yielding. It's high potency. It should be between 20 and 25% THC. And it's a looker. It's a good plant. Smells strong. Another one that we have here, this is called Stone Fruit Sunset. It's got beautiful frosty buds. It's got purple. And it's got a very complex aroma. It has like that gas and lemon I mentioned from Lemon Rocket, but it's got a lot more going on. It's I can't wait for you to smell it, to try it. I think you're going to love it. Now, bear in mind, these plants are still in week 5 of flowering, so they have some time to bulk up and get frostier. But by the end, they're going to be great plants. Now, to give you an idea of what these smell like, we put together a fun package for everyone in the media and for our influencer friends. You should all have this, and if you were to go through it, you will see that there is a card in here with some information about Aurora Coast, about the process that we do here, and then information about these 3 new products we're going to be launching, including their terpene profile, bud description, THC range, the aroma, and the genetics that went into it. So you can get information about that there. And in here, you'll see the individual aromas that we put together so that you can get an idea of what to expect when you actually order the flower yourself. For the first cultivar, Stone Fruit Sunset, we decided to be a little fun and do 3 individual aromas that we want you to combine yourself after smelling them individually. So the first aroma, it's got berry notes, it's kind of sweet, it smells great. And so I want you to take the vial that says Stone Fruit Sunset, after smelling it, and pour it in there. The next aroma Smells strongly of gasoline. It's got some lemon aroma to it, and I want you to take that and also add that in there. And then lastly, aroma number 3. It's got great floral notes. It's high on the palate. It smells great. And then add that in there. And then when you have these all combined, you'll get an idea of what the overall package smells like for Stone Fruit Sunset. Now, this is just an approximation of what the smell is. It's far more complex. There's a lot more than terpenes that go into cannabis that influence the aroma. So I'm excited for you to try ordering this, smelling itself, and you'll see that there's a lot more than just this. But this is a fun way of giving you an idea of what to expect, because it can be difficult to get influencers in the media flower early in advance, at least until you can come visit us here at Aurora Coast. We also have Lemon Rocket here. Lemon Rocket smells, I mentioned, just like gasoline and lemons. Very pungent. And then the last one is Driftwood Diesel. Driftwood Diesel is the most potent out of the 3 of them. Should be 21 to 26% THC. And it smells strong. It's musky, it's dank, it's like that classic cannabis aroma, but just cranked to 11. It smells great. So I think you're going to love these 3 new products. And this is just the beginning. The way this system is set up, like I said earlier, is that this whole pipeline is run in parallel so that we can continuously deliver new cultivars to market, taking in that market information to understand exactly what consumers want, just keep us flexible and exciting. I'm really excited for the next couple years. I think we're going to do very great things here at Aurora Coast, and you're going to love what we're producing. And just as a sneak peek, I have what is next in the pipeline right here. So I've already selected 5 new cultivars that we're looking to commercialize after the 3 that we've already discussed here. And then I already have ones even behind that. So I'm looking forward to reading the feedback, the reviews, hearing what people like and dislike about these. And that's going to definitely be very, very beneficial for us to help guide our future selection process. So as Greg said, I can't wait for you guys to actually come out and see the facility, to actually see the way we have things set up. It's a beautiful site. We have beautiful plants, and we have a strong future. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Andrew. I think it's always eye-opening, even for someone who works here, to kind of see the breadth of the expertise we have here. Greg, very much kind of a long-term, 5 to 10-year view of how we create a foundation for Aurora to be leaders in science for years to come. And Andrew, really sort of a laser focus on how we can commercialize new production cultivars now to benefit Aurora, and also the potential to benefit other growers as well. So you have an opportunity for questions and posed to Greg, Andrew, and myself. You can use them on the chat. I have a few questions already that I'll direct to Andrew, two to Andrew, then two to Greg. The first one, Andrew, what is the importance of novelty or uniqueness in the cultivar selection process? Like, how much is that something that consumers are looking for in new cultivars?
I think it's incredibly important. I think that there's a lot of products out there on the market now from a large number of different LPs, and it's difficult to stand out. And I know throughout my time at MedRelief doing the breeding there, going to a number of different cannabis cups and seeing what the diversity is out there, and then here the work we've done where we've already screened through thousands and thousands of genotypes, there is a lot of diversity that's already out there that smells great, is exciting, is new, is fresh. And I think people want that. They want to try something new every time. It's kind of why the craft beer industry has exploded, because there's lots of different products out there and they want to be able to see exactly what we can bring to market. And I think you're going to be surprised when you see over the years the diversity in aromas, in shapes, in colors, in potencies. As I said, this is just the beginning, and you're going to see a wide range of different things that smell different than just your average skunky, myrcene dominant cannabis. It's going to smell great, and you're going to love it.
Great, thanks, Andrew. The second question is, how is Aurora using sensory panels in terms of both the breeding process and, I guess, the commercialization or marketing process? How does that system work?
Well, we have a team of people that are trained to be as objective as possible, and that's the key word, objectiveness. things like aroma and smell can be very subjective, and one person can attribute a smell to one thing, and that's very different than another person. So having a team of people that have smelled an extremely wide range and know what's out there and can provide notes on the individual aromas and whatnot can be extremely valuable in guiding our breeding process, because they're also able to smell our competitors' products and understand what is out there and where we might have gaps in our offerings. We don't want to launch a product that is similar to everything else out there and isn't differentiating and new. So this will allow us to understand where there's gaps in our offerings, where there's gaps in the market in general, and where trends go. And so that team is critical in this whole pipeline.
And I know it's a fascinating part of just the early review and assessment process at Coast, where we have in some of the consultants with cannabis expertise to kind of go through to work with you and look at terpene profiles and a range of sort of characteristics of new cultivars. And I think that, the kind of novelty and uniqueness, you really see what aficionados of cannabis can bring. And two questions for Greg. The first one being, what is a disruptive technology when it comes to the cannabis industry? What are you seeing? You're looking at the long term. What are you seeing in the future that could really change this industry?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something I challenge myself with all the time. I think the biggest transition we're going to see in the future for cannabis is the move to seeds. So right now, pretty much all across Canada, licensed producers are using the sort of mother clone system, right? So you grow up moms, which might take up 10 or 15% of your grow space. You have to keep them healthy. You have to keep them pruned, clone them, root the clones, put the clones out. And it's super labor intensive. It's super risky in terms of disease and keeping the management and the timing, right for getting those clones. So I'm very confident that the industry will move to seed-based propagation. So instead of growing moms and clones, you just put seeds in the ground. This is very challenging from a genetics perspective. We haven't made real stable genetics in cannabis before. So it is a longer-term goal for us, but I think it'll be super disruptive because it'll essentially change how all growers grow.
Great, and the second part of that is Aurora working on GM, genetically modified cannabis?
Yeah, so we have no intention of ever putting genetically modified products out in the market. I don't think that the regulatory hurdles for that or the consumer preference for that is not going to make it possible. That said, it is a super useful research tool, so we can look at those technologies as purely as a research tool and keep it carefully firewalled and separate it from our breeding pipeline, because it can be a really key way to validate that genetic research that we're doing to confirm that, yes, this is the gene that we want to be using for marker-assisted selection. But the reality is, because cannabis is so new in its breeding history, right? It's so new to have really intensive, large-scale breeding efforts like what we have, that we have a ton of progress to make before we need to reach out to those tools like that. So yeah, it's not something we're really thinking about right now.
Thanks, Greg. I think we'll jump back to Andrew. A question from Rose Hagan. How long does it take between initial screening, the thousands of varieties, and commercialization for a new cultivar?
So the whole pipeline is set up to be about a 2-year process. So from the time we need to create seeds, if there's a specific ask for a cultivar that has XYZ characteristics and we need to design crosses to do that, to the time we actually bring something out at the market, it's about a 2-year-long process. But as I mentioned, we're actually starting this process every 6 months, so it's run in parallel. So it's not like we need to wait 2 years to launch new products. We should be able to launch new products on a pretty even cadence of about every 6 months or so. Because again, the pipeline will be starting at the very beginning regularly. We'll be validating new products here at Coast, and then we'll be sending new cultivars to our production facilities, again, on a 6-month basis to see how they do in those sites. And then at the end of that, sending flower to our expert and sensory panels to get information on the consumer qualities. So as I mentioned, about 2 years beginning to end, but a launch cycle of about 6 months because we're running it in parallel.
And a follow-up question for Andrew. from Aaron Halerchuk. How many cultivars is Aurora working on at any one time?
Thousands. In this room, we have about 50 that have gone through the entire pipeline and are now being currently validated. So you'll see 50 high-quality products, plants that all meet the necessary morphological characteristics, the height, the yield, but are also high potency, high terpenes, and look good. But that's just the very end of the pipeline. The beginning, we're talking about thousands of seeds that we germinate, and I mentioned earlier, potentially even tens of thousands if we incorporate marker-assisted selection, which you're going to be doing more and more and more as Greg's program validates more markers that associate with the traits we're looking for. So at the very beginning, thousands. The next round is hundreds, and then the next round is dozens, and then the next round is 5 to 8 that we're trialing in production sites. So it's an upside-down funnel that starts with a very large number and then ends with the absolute winners at the very end.
And another cultivar development question from Gene. Are there any cultivars that are being developed that will be specifically for extraction or 2.0 products, or are they mostly for flower products?
That's a very good question, and something that we've actually discussed in the past. Right now, the focus is on the dry flower market, finding products that will be good for both extraction as well as dry flower, a complete package. But we've talked about it. We've found plants that might not necessarily produce a great bag appeal in terms of dry flower, but if there's efficiencies in this genotype in terms of its yield and potency and the extract is exceptional, it's something that we could certainly do for sure. I have a couple cultivars in my back pocket here that we've held onto that we think could be useful for that exact reason. They might be easier to mill, to put into an extraction vessel. Their trichome properties might be better for rosin, all that. So yeah, it's a very good question. It's something that we certainly have thought about in the past and are considering.
Thanks, Andrew. And a question from Andrew Finley. How long does it take to bring a new cultivar to market? And maybe a sort of a follow-up to that. The 3 that are being released this week or tomorrow, when did those start in the trial process?
So we first gave the new cultivars to our river facility at the end of last year, and they have gone through a couple different trials and are now in full production and ready to be launched mid-July. But the system is set up so that roughly every 6 months we deliver about a dozen or so genotypes to our production facilities to do successive rounds of trialing in those sites, really stress testing them in terms of their environment and how they grow, in terms of consistency. And then at the end of that, the idea is that out of those dozen or so that we trial in production, we're able to commercialize a small handful, maybe 2 or 3 or 4, or however many we feel that we need to bring to our brands. And we'll know that we'll have a lot of data out of a production site to be able to talk about its consistency, to talk about its yield, and to see how it does time and time again. Because it's one thing to find a plant that does great one time. It's a whole other thing to find a plant that does great consistently time and time again. And that's really important. So again, we're sending cultivars to our production sites to trial multiple times to be able to select the ones that do the best time and time again.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to direct the next question to Greg. It's from Tara Deschamps. How many plants from one growing period typically don't get validated, and what's the most common reason?
Yeah, so that's a good question, actually. That's like so in the breeding pipeline, as Andrew was mentioning, we obviously start with many genotypes and filter it down to fewer and fewer. And at each phase, we generally throw away 80%, right? So it is a very aggressive selection because we only want the very best getting through. At each stage also we test for different things, or we filter on different things, and that has to do for a number of reasons. For example, how much some of the analysis costs. So we sort of save those for the end, and we do some of the more obvious things earlier, right? When we're growing thousands and thousands, if you grow thousands of seeds right out of the gate, 10%, 20% are going to obviously be really bad. So they're easy to get rid of because they have poor yield or poor vigor or late flowering time. But as we get further and further down, like in this room, for example, we have 50 exceptionally good plants, and we're really hard pressed to pick, the best 5 out of here, because they're all very good. So there we're looking at, this one has 1% more terpenes or 2% more THC, or it has a little bit more favorable plant shape, for example. So it gets to be very, very fine at the end of the pipeline, but very aggressive, let's say, at the early stages of the pipeline, where we're really trying to take down the numbers and get rid of the obvious duds.
Thanks, Greg. I know plant breeders are often ruthless in terms of you look at 2 plants and they both look really good, and you're like, nope, that one on the left, that's not going anywhere, and we're going to kick that out of the pipeline. A question back to Andrew. Have you conducted any research on cultivars' response to different light quality for growers using LEDs, for example, or using baseline light conditions like HPS or natural sunlight spectra and intensity? So really an environmental growing condition question.
That's a very, very good question, because I've seen genotypes do extremely well in a greenhouse environment or under LEDs that look like very different plants under HPS. So that's something we take very seriously, and part of the production trialing we do. Each of our sites have different growing methods or different growing conditions. Some have LEDs, some have high pressure sodium, some have a mix of the two. So we do trialing at each one of these sites to get all of that data on how they do in the different environments that use different CO2 or different temperature regimes. And that helps us determine which cultivars are kind of jack of all trades. It's better to find something that can do well in each site. That being said, if we find something that's 10 out of 10 and exceptional that is just for greenhouse, well, that's something we need to bear in mind too. So here at Coast, we are a greenhouse, we are using LEDs, but we do have access to all of our production sites that we're able to do these trials in to get that kind of data. And we're always talking about how can we improve Aurora Coast to be able to get more information. So I'm thinking about maybe a corner of a room that's high pressure sodium, or maybe one of our smaller rooms we could trial different environmental conditions that we get from cultivators, so they'll tell us what those conditions are and we can try to replicate those. But that's a very good question and something that we're certainly aware of.
Thanks, Andrew. And I know we're quite proud of our commitment to sustainability at Aurora Coast, partially because we use water-cooled LED lighting, and that was a challenging decision about 2 years ago or 3 years ago when the design process was underway. What was the lighting mix we could have at Coast? But really, it's been a significant reduction in energy use is probably the biggest difference. But it's also provided a very high quality environment for cannabis growing, and I think it's provides some flexibility. It's great to work under. There's lots of good reasons to use LED lighting. That Coast has kind of validated. So that's the end of the questions. We're about 11:40 Pacific time here. I want to thank everyone again for attending. Remind you that there's lots of opportunities to get more information. So reach out to Kate Hillier directly, text or email. Again, there's lots of people, whether it's Greg or Andrew, Charles Pick or Lana Cully, are all available. If there's even financial questions, there's a ways to direct you to some of our financial and marketing teams to answer those as well. There'll be a post-event email with images, some more background information, the video. That's going to come to you tomorrow, so look in your inbox, and if you don't see it, reach out to Kate. And as we said earlier, we're really keen now that COVID, we seem to be on the last stages of the pandemic. Vaccination rates are going up. All the good things are happening. So we're really hopeful that by perhaps late summer, more likely into the fall, we're going to be looking at opportunities for having people on site at Coast, showing off some of these rooms. It really makes a huge difference to be able to actually go through a cannabis room and not just talk about different cultivars, but to smell them and look at their bud density and their plant architecture and things like that. So exciting times ahead for, and there will be those opportunities. So again, keep in touch about that. And thank you again. Reach out to Kate if you want more information, and bye for now. So thanks everyone. See you soon.